Welcome to Like-Minded with Dr. Patrice. Today, Dr. Benjamin Danielson joins us to explore the hidden cost of resilience, what endurance could quietly demand of us, and how wisdom shapes when and how we continue walking forward. This conversation invites us into how early environments shape the way we move through systems, what it means to remain in spaces that don't always protect our humanity, and how community, reflection, and intention become essential to survival and healing. Dr. Benjamin Danielson is a pediatrician and clinical professor of pediatrics at the University of Washington School of Medicine. Over the course of his career, Dr. Ben has been deeply engaged in advancing equity in healthcare, helping to create and lead diversity initiatives across medical institutions. He has also contributed to public health policy, serving on multiple health boards at the local and state levels. From 1999 to 2020, Dr. Ben served as the medical director of Odessa Brown Children's Clinic, one of Seattle's most respected, community-based pediatric clinics. In 2020, he stepped away from that role and publicly named systemic racism and institutional resistance to change within healthcare leadership. In 2021, Dr. Ben launched ASHE, which stands for Allies in Healthier Systems for Health and Abundance in Youth, a program focused on preventing youth incarceration and creating pathways grounded in dignity, creativity, and possibility. Welcome, Dr. Ben. So, Dr. Ben, in preparing for this conversation, it became really evident to me that your early life involved moving through very different environments. And that kind of movement often requires a lot of adaptation from us, kind of learning how to become a bit of a chameleon. So I'd love to start there. Tell me a little bit about those kind of early environments that you moved through. And I'd love to discuss what they taught you about safety and belonging and responsibility.
Ooh, those are big words.
They are. Let's get into it.
I appreciate the question, and I think just at the meta for a moment, to be Black in America involves a lot of navigating,
Right.
a lot of deep situational awareness, and kind of using the skills sometimes for survival, sometimes to be seen, sometimes to figure out
Right.
how to be present in spaces. It's just it's like work. It's its own bit of job.
It is.
So I don't think my experience is any different at that level than any other just Black person in this country. Situationally, I had the experiences as a child of being moved from inner city DC back when it really was kind of chocolate city. Out to rural Montana in high school.
Very
And
different.
So,
Right.
yes, those adaptive skills were called upon. And my elders did a lot to help me. They gave me a lot of good advice in preparing for that kind of a change.
Talk me through what precipitated that move and, especially navigating that at that point in your life. I mean, being in high school is such like an important developmental time, right? When you're already figuring out who you are, and who you want to be, how do you want to show up in the world. So tell me about your life in DC and then your life in Montana and how that came to be.
I was sort of dropping out and starting to try to disappear a little bit from a school perspective. I was receiving the message that I was not destined to do well in school, and I was sort of embodying that or mad at that. One way or the other, I was starting to skip school a lot and looking for sort of belonging in other spaces and places, mostly on the corners and things. And that started to become apparent to my mom. I think at the same time, she was also trying to rediscover and kind of reconnect with her own dreams. And so I believe there was a sort of those two ideas were kind of in synergy for her when she decided to move us out of DC and into Montana.
Yeah. And so in DC, it sounds like you're in the streets, you're getting in a bit of trouble. Probably fewer corners to get into trouble in Montana, but What were some of the the challenges there?
It was a little bit like being dropped onto an alien planet where you just don't know the rules and the decor. Some of the things, like there are humans that look like humans, and yet everything, the rules, the unspoken rules, the decor was just everything was something you had to figure out fast.
Right.
And Montana, people drove pickup trucks, and their rifles were across on like racks across the back of their pickup trucks. And they would slow down and stare at this black person that they had never seen live before.
Oh God, yes.
They would sometimes just look at me and sort of pat their rifles and kind of like
Really?
with a little bit of a like,
Just making sure you see
got
it.
our eye on
Yeah.
people. Yeah, that kind of stuff. There were adjustments. There was also, I suppose there was just also honest curiosity about. I was the first black person in their high school and in their midst. There was a bit of what I've really interpreted as honest curiosity.
Did they want to touch your hair, Dr. Ben?
Yeah, come on now. You know they did. That was like the number one thing. But then all the other questions like, show me where that extra muscle is, because I heard you all have an extra muscle.
Wow.
And all the things. Yeah.
Wow. You're starting to talk about some of the lessons that you learned in DC. Who were your teachers, and what did you take with you when you moved to that different environment in Montana?
I was very blessed to have these elders, these aunties, these women mostly around the way in the neighborhood that I roamed around in. And they did beautiful things like take me in sometimes, feed me when I looked extra skinny and hungry, try to teach me how to make my hair a little less nappy. And, just kind of like, have you ever heard of Lotion Boy? Like kind of like other things.
Got him moisturized.
Yeah, where's that shape? Like all the things like that. They're also like grumpy at me, like you should be in school. What are you doing?
Yeah.
They also looked out for me. And when a few of them I got closer to, I talked about my mom's plans to move us, and I was contemplating running away or doing something. Just so I was not adjusting to that idea well. And I think they really started to pour into me the kind of advice elders give. Some of it, the things that would be very familiar to a lot of Black people about the importance of being twice as good.
Yes.
Some of it very safety oriented. You might feel things inside, but you don't have the same permission to express those things because yesterday you were kind of a cute little nappy-haired, skinny, knock-kneed boy, and now you're a scarier looking Black man to a lot of people, and they made that very apparent. I felt they had like a strange amount of premonition when I moved to Montana because so much of their advice was actually on point. It sounds weird; it didn't make as much sense in DC as it did.
Right, but they knew.
Out of it. Yeah, they kind of knew, and they had the lessons.
I don't know if you agree, if you think that this is part of it, but you used the word premonition. But I imagine at that time probably a lot of people who came to DC had come from the South and had learned how to navigate those spaces. So even though you hadn't lived through it, they had, or it was in their DNA to know how to navigate that. So they probably knew a lot of what you're walking into in Montana.
So true. And the truth about DC is that, as a child, you spend a lot of time within whatever 12 blocks was your hood, your neighborhood. We had to be very careful about going into other neighborhoods unless we were under the right circumstances, the right permissions and stuff. And so a lot of that life got a little bit contained, but you also knew the Mason-Dixon line is like just right up close to DC.
Yes.
And you would take a drive sometimes heading somewhere, and you could see very clearly that the rest of the perceptions and the way in which racism was infused into so much of the world is right there as well.
Yeah, I believe that. And you spent some time in the foster care system as well prior to that, right? How did that shape you?
I think ironically, not so much in my conscious memory because I was one of those lucky people rescued from the system at a pretty young age. But sort of in my being, I recognize the pieces of being careful about not rocking the boat sometimes
Right.
too much and
Yes.
risking being rejected from spaces, or the need to be very, very aware of how other people understood and prioritized the world around them. Those kinds of things,
Hmm.
hard to describe, but I've worked with a lot of foster care youth since then as a pediatrician, and you see these patterns, right? That are, I feel, relatively survival oriented.
Yes.
Either you're not going to love me, so I'm just going to make sure that there's no space for love,
Hmm.
or you're not going to love me, so I'm just going to work my damnedest and find a space for that to happen.
Right. Yes. I mean, and those kinds of adaptive skills, right? Like we know when people are trying to survive, the things that they do, and when they're not in that environment anymore, trying to shed those, the ones that they don't need anymore, right? What a journey and how difficult that can be
Yeah.
because these are things that helped you survive. And so, how do you know
Yeah.
that it's safe to let go of that? How do you know that it's safe to accept love from other people and protection and care and that kind of thing when that has not been safe to you in the past?
Okay, I can tell the way you asked that you also have your own lived experiences and
Yes.
understandings of all of that, and I imagine we all do.
Hmm.
And it's still work. Like this twice as good thing.
Yes.
I bought into the value of that, and I thought it helped me be an extra achiever in academics
Hmm.
eventually, and in performance towards my profession and things. Um, and I consciously realized the untruth of that and the damage that that is, not only for me personally, but for us. When you engage in that, when you embrace that, and yet there is still those are deep. Those
They do. They run deep.
somewhere just north of instinct and just south of training, like they get in there deep, deep,
So
and so
true.
it's life work to get rid of it, and it brings all the other things like imposter syndrome and
Mm,
twice as good but never quite good enough
right.
is the rest of that sentence sometimes in the way you approach life. And I don't mean that. I'm sorry, that sounded like I don't feel like a victim
Mm,
or
doesn't sound
anything,
like
but I
that.
do feel
No.
like there's a way of being careful about the world.
Right. Because for all of that, like those lessons about, working harder and doing better and being kind of above reproach, right? There's still systemic things that will come into play that and structural things that will come into play that make some of that stuff not matter as much as, we hope that it would, right? I want you to take me through your time in Montana and then you're starting to mention, going through college and everything like that. What was that journey for you? You're the only Black kid, the alien being in rural Montana. Where do you go from there?
Extreme situational awareness, right?
Yes.
On a lot of levels, and an experience that uh, felt more solitary.
Mm,
And some good pieces of that are uh, I think you're asked to know yourself
yes.
pretty well. And I think that the motivations feel pretty strong because um, the stakes also feel fairly strong. Um, I found the strange inconsistencies of those experiences of racism that also are helpful on some level, because I know today I'm a little bit better at not thinking in such binary way about either
Mm.
ors and black and whites, because I would have those weird experiences where like feeling really accepted sometimes, I'll admit mostly on a basketball court or a football field.
Thank you for
And then
adding
other
that
times where
detail.
and then other times where there was like where they were patting their rifles, and
Yeah.
that is imbalance, right? That
Mm,
sets you in a sense that the ground underneath you is not quite so predictable, and there are events later in our lives where it's actually important to know that no matter how much we think we can either outgame the game, uh, perform perfectly, or sort of rise above everything that's happening, the depth of the forces of bias, oppression, and racism are pretty powerful. The ways
yes.
in which people systematically work to harm other people is pretty strong, even in a society that's very loving. And those
Mm,
contradictions if you don't have some connection to those contradictions, I think it would just like drive you to some like frenzy, right? Like, wait a
Right.
minute, I thought this, but now that, but I thought that, but now this. And
Yes.
so
Or I'd planned
it,
my whole life around this thing that I was told that if I just do this and stay on this path, then things are going to go in this direction for me. And this other thing comes out of nowhere, right? And takes you
yeah,
off that
yeah,
path. Well, and I
yeah.
also know that, or correct me if I'm wrong, but when you were in Montana, you had two sisters, right?
Yes,
But they would they have had different experiences than you because they're both white, right?
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
my mom, who rescued me, was white, and my two sisters were white, and so there was they had experiences of all the ways in which gender bias show up
Right.
in communities like
Which is
that,
plenty.
and they shared a lot between themselves and shared a lot. Tried to teach me
Mm.
about that,
Mm.
but the black experience, and in some ways the black male experience, was not something I had a whole lot of reference points to when I was in Montana.
Yes. Yes, you're right. And I'm just imagining all of these lenses that you're developing and ways of seeing the world from being in these spaces, but also, having close proximity to other people's experiences, and how all of that kind of comes together. And when you see patients, you can probably look at them through a lot of different, lenses in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those words start to enter you on the journey to empathy, right?
Right.
Which is a bit of understanding your own self well
Mm.
enough, but also understanding that the universe is so much greater than your own experiences, and whatever has felt like a hardship to you, for example,
Mm.
there are other hardships out there, and whatever things gives you the idea that you understand the world. You just hold on a second and
Just wait.
just listen. Yeah, listen to someone else,
Yes.
and wait a minute. And that's a life gift of continued learning, I guess.
Yeah.
Also, a good personal challenge, but I think it's the roots of empathy and compassion as well.
I think that's right. If you're able to be vulnerable and open to hearing other people's stories, right? Even,
Mm.
even in the midst of your own pain or, the things that you're going through, right? You have to be able to hear it, I suppose, and absorb it.
Well, that's your profession. Is like you
It
are
is.
always making space for other people's stories.
Yeah.
And so yeah, yeah.
But I think, Dr. Ben, I think, such an important part of being able to do that is to have been working and continually working on yourself, right? Because you
Mhm.
can't really do it if you are still like struggling with your own thing, or someone's talking and you're thinking about, oh, well, how that affects me, and I'm upset now by what you're saying, and I'm not with you anymore, right? I'm not present with you anymore. So I think for all of
Mhm.
us, it's my profession, but I think it's all of our responsibilities, to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, you wanna be a good partner to a spouse, you wanna
Right.
be a good parent,
Yes.
you wanna be a good part of a team. Those are all required skills, or at
Yeah.
least skills you should continue to work on. Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, so take me back, because clearly for you to be where you are right now, your mom taking you out of DC where you're getting in trouble, it seems to have done some good work for you. What happened?
Yeah. This is a side note for a
Okay.
second, but I was just talking to another person, um, who came through the lived experience, a little bit of sort of refugee status, and
Mm.
being raised also by a single mom, very different culture. And I know this person because she became a pediatrician also, and I was positionally supposed to be a mentor. I think she was teaching me most of the time. But anyway, we were talking this morning over coffee about how she said, Dr. Ben, I never shared this really with you, but when I was a kid, I didn't really want to be a doctor. In fact,
Mm.
I told my mom I wanted to be what was it, architect or an artist or something like that. And mom got up, walked into the kitchen, and came out holding a knife. And my mom put the knife to her own throat and said, "If you don't go and be a doctor, then what am I doing here? Like, why am I here?" And like basically held
Oh my God, that's
to her own
extreme.
throat, not to my friends, but to her own throat.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's just some shared experiences across that sense of,
Because that mom, she'd sacrificed so much to put her daughter in a position where she could fulfill this dream, that like, how dare you not? How dare you not? I guess that's true, right? Because to decide what you want to do and how you want to navigate with to the world, and not worry about, you know, safety and security, those kind of things, is such a privilege that a lot of people don't feel like they have.
Isn't that the definition of privilege?
Right.
Like to have that kind
Choice
of
is 100% the
choice.
definition.
I don't know. Maybe this, maybe that.
I'm going to take a year off. Like, that's adorable.
Oh yeah. Okay, like, yeah, that was never a concept for a lot of us, right? This is something in the space of survival.
Yes.
And I'm not the only one who spent plenty of nights sleeping in a car and not having a secure roof over the head, and the threats of poverty have different effects on different people as they grow up. For me, safety, security were important, and the passion that I have and have had for the real privilege, the honor of being a pediatrician, also matched with the knowledge that most communities need a pediatrician. Like, it's a job security space.
Right. It is.
Whatever notes I acquire, paying, getting loans and things like that through my college and medical school time, I also knew I could pay that note, and that was also deeply important to me.
Yeah,
the security of that.
Yeah. What were your college? No. I loved it. I love the side note, because I think it gives you so much context, right? For what, not only because none of us are on our own doing the things just that we want to do and not thinking about anyone else, or the things that they've sacrificed for us, or the things that, the expectations that they have of us. Take me through your college and medical school years.
I came into college liking science and thinking that was a space for me. But then also sort of as a side thing, doing the mentoring big brothers thing. I was probably the worst, like a 10, 12-year-old kid basketball coach in the Boston area. And, but, really feeling like that was something important about that as well. And it took me a year or two of college to realize I could work with people, young people, and be in this space of knowledge and science by going to medical school. So that was kind of the drive and the draw.
Why was it important to you to work with young people?
I would not have used this word back then, but my understanding of who I was then, all that, like, let's project ourselves back to our 19-year-old selves or whatever. A lot of it was the space of gratitude, and the space of maybe understanding the importance of building community around you, or being part of community that is built around you, and the reciprocity of that.
Yes.
That reciprocity, I think one of the words you said, safety, belonging, and responsibility. And I think that triad is also built into that before understanding, but kind of knowing that a 19 or 20-year-old might be making decisions about the world, and finding something that they don't even interrogate enough to fully understand, but feel the rightness of it, of like, this space of investing in our future, and seeing people and humans, and understanding brilliance in all these different ways that it shows up in young people, and also knowing that you have a role in the community around you. Those are all swimming in there, and I guarantee you I would not have found those words back then.
Right. But I'm sure some even, subconscious part of you is like reaching back, like, to all those aunties that are giving you the, maybe sometimes unsolicited, unwanted advice, but like, hey, I'm trying to prepare you for the world, because I've seen things that you haven't, and I know what might be ahead of you.
Yeah. My earlobes are still sore from their pulling, but they live on in us, don't they?
Yes.
And I'm so grateful. Gratitude.
Right. And I wonder, Dr. Ben, as you carry this sense of responsibility, for the patients that you see, for the community, that you serve, you're also probably, as you're getting higher and higher up, recognizing which spaces are not equitable and where there's gaps in care and that kind of thing. So I'm interested in what patterns you kind of noticed, and kind of maybe what was the cost to you to notice and bring awareness to some of those patterns?
Well, they're all the way through and pretty consistent. Even in Seattle, without a huge Black population, I found really good mentors who were de facto survivors of
Mm.
a healthcare professional system that did not accept or want them.
Oh.
I had mentorship from a doctor who was in his waning years of his profession, but he was the person who had to go through the back door of one of the major hospitals and bring his patients through that same back door because they were not allowed to enter through the main entrance.
Mm.
That's not just a South thing. That was a Seattle thing.
I think that's
Um,
surprising to a lot of people to hear that was in Seattle. That
yeah,
because it is so ingrained. When you said that, I'm thinking the South. I think for all
right,
of
right.
us.
Yeah, it is. And I'm sure you have other shows you've talked about where the subtlety of the racism in the North and in the West is in some ways more outrageous and difficult to navigate than
Mm.
the plainness and the straightforwardness of it in other parts.
At least you know what to expect, right? In some place, so you know what's expected of you, and in
Yeah,
other, yes.
yeah,
That's
yep,
so.
yep. Even in Boston, when somebody didn't like you, you knew it like right
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
Sometimes in the Northwest, you don't know that.
Mm.
But more importantly, there were people who were there to guide me. There were still, I think I sought out elders and I found really, really great ones. Really amazing Black women,
Mm.
especially some Black men who were willing to share and pour into me and also give me guidance when I needed it. That might also be a residue of some foster
Mm.
care life where you keep choosing family, right? You keep
Right.
like selecting, looking for, and choosing. I know also being raised by a single mom, I sought out the father figures
Uh-huh.
whose lived experiences felt like they were going to be really helpful. I
Yes, absolutely.
still do that. I know it. But those those things were part of the navigating and my early understanding in medical school. You watched and you learned all these patterns, and if you sit with it for a while, you start to wonder, like, that's so interesting that one of the first diseases I learned about in medical school was sickle cell disease, but it wasn't because of all the reasons that we understand about sickle cell disease. It was mostly because it was the most clear condition where one biologic change, one amino acid shift
Hmm.
turned into a whole body disease. And so for learning health care, learning medicine as a student, there aren't that many diseases that give you that whole pathway from that to that.
Really?
But it stopped there. It did not talk about about the racism, the built-in conditions, the ways later when I was working in community, how I
Uh-huh.
understand that a 14-year-old who's suffering a sickle cell pain crisis comes into an emergency room and there is no particular blood test that can tell you what that pain is like for that person. There's no imaging study that can
Oh.
show you how much pain or where that pain should be. They're just pointing to a spot and saying, this hurts really bad. And in
Mm.
fact, they're so used to having pain, they don't even show the same facial expressions that I might when I have a
Right.
broken bone or something,
Yes.
and yet their pain is even greater than that.
Yes.
So here we have a 14-year-old Black person coming into an ER, a doctor and a nurse who haven't seen them
Mm-hmm.
before,
Mm-hmm. Are
a
not looking
racial
for that.
divide
Yes. Mm-hmm.
deeply built into the racism. And this person is saying, I am in pain and I need very strong pain medication. And that doctor does not believe them. And they
Wow.
don't believe them for all of the reasons that people want to avoid taking into account, which are basically based in racism.
Mm-hmm.
And that dynamic was not taught at all
Right.
in those first weeks of medical school. Those inconsistencies and those things you begin to notice more and more. You start to work in a hospital during residency, and you just start to see these practices where the adjectives or the nuances of conversations about patients who are Black are
Mm-hmm.
just different than the ones that are white. The ones that are poor are talked about differently than the ones who are not poor, and it seeps into the medical record. And you
Yes.
realize as a resident that like we are actually supposed to be chroniclers of people's stories
Mm-hmm.
by getting information into a chart. We're the ones that write, like a patient doesn't get to write their own chart, like we're
Right.
there writing these.
Mm.
And these words that show up more frequently if you're Black or poor are so disparaging. And sometimes they're hidden, especially maybe here in the Northwest,
Mm-hmm.
sandwiched around something nice. But in there is this nugget of like, I don't believe this person.
Yes. I can't relate to
Don't,
them, to them
yeah,
and their pain, right? And, as you're
yeah,
talking about this, Dr. Ben, I'm really thinking about, you're talking about, these physical symptoms. And to me, I think it's very much the same thing as what happens with kind of the emotional symptoms, right? Like the way that people express depression or burnout,
yeah,
depending on what you've already
yeah.
been through and how you have to
Mhm.
survive, it may not show up. So someone who is not looking for different kinds of ways of expressing emotional or physical pain is not going to be able to
Right,
acknowledge it. It's like they're fine. They don't need it. They're
right.
not that bad. Or, also maybe even, more insidious. Oh, they're aggressive. They're angry, where really it's like, if it was someone else, would that be them? Oh, they're advocating for themselves. And the language that we use based on who we see in front of us and the assumptions that we've made is really damaging for people.
Oh, true. And it extends beyond, I use this example of sickle cell because it's a convenient starting point. But,
Mhm.
as I got into residency and was starting to do more research and studying and understanding the pediatric space, I also saw these studies that would show up that would say a Black child coming into an ER for any kind of pain, not just sickle cell pain, but like broken bone or very obvious and overt pain,
Mm.
the same pain that another child who maybe is white comes in for, that Black child is significantly less likely to get treated for that pain.
Mm.
And that it's not just the invisibility of sickle cell condition, it is the visibility of this thing called racism that
Yes.
is not based on a set of biologic markers because we're all 99.95% the same.
Mhm.
Um, it's based on a social construct that uses racism to justify race, to justify difference in treatment.
Yes.
And that understanding is just something, especially when you're like, again, one or two Black people in a residency program and watching this happen. It's an internal dialogue as much as anything else because there isn't somebody you can necessarily say, hey, did you just see that too?
Right.
And that finds you in the roots of what now I consider the gaslighting of racism, where
Mhm.
like, am I crazy or did that just
Is
happen?
right. Is it me? Am I, is this just something I'm
Yeah,
seeing, or, and
like
but
it is.
as you made these connections and as you noticed these patterns, I know you really felt compelled to do something about it, right? Because it's step one to notice them. And
Yeah,
then there's that decision, like, okay, what can I do? What am I going to do? And how do
yeah,
I maintain, um, a position, not necessarily of power, but of influence, right? Because it's important that you're there
yeah,
seeing these, but then also now what's the action that can be taken?
yeah. So true. What's your responsibility?
But
And as I
yes.
was starting to uh, work through and get more and more trained in pediatrics, a lot of that time was spent at one particular children's hospital here in Seattle. And
Hmm.
I was so grateful for the the people who taught me. I was especially grateful to the many nurses who really like were probably my main teachers in
Mm.
many different ways. And there was a lot of sense of shared experience and love in working in a hospital, especially before this hospital became quite so corporate. But at the same time, you'd start to notice these patterns. And I was lucky enough to, in that place of responsibility and privilege, to start to recommend things and they would start to happen. But this pattern of starting but not fully responding was
Mm.
what I started to see. And one example was helped get this um, Center for Diversity and Health Equity started. And this was, I don't know, 2006 or 7 or something, a bit before that was the most common thing in the world for any hospital to have. And I was like, if we're going to start a center like this, it should start with an internal exploration of what our practices are.
Mm.
And for some reason, the hospital was willing enough to embark on that. And so we started looking at things. And one of the first things that came up was the way security was called within the hospital. And it became
Ah.
very clear that if you were Black, security was called significantly more often than if you were white.
Hmm.
The hospital, to its credit, allowed this information to be learned and gleaned, even got it presented to the hospital board, and then nothing happened.
Ugh.
Um, and that became a pattern of like as you said, it's one thing not to know that you're doing harm. It is a completely other thing. Think about that in healthcare, especially to
Yes.
know that you're doing harm, to recognize and acknowledge it, and then not do anything.
Right.
That was the pattern that happened at this hospital, and I think hospitals and healthcare systems all over this country. And it showed up again and again. And even to the point where, 10 years later, it would get studied again. And the same pattern was still there.
And nothing's
the hospital,
changed. Huh.
oh, there'd be a little bit of a, what do you call it? Like a dog and pony, like a parade.
Yes.
Like, this is
Yes.
terrible. We're going to do something about it.
Right.
We've created this hotline if you are feeling like you're experiencing something. And families that I worked with in a clinic that was serving mostly Black people would say, yeah, that hotline is just another way for them to put us on a list. Like we see through. And so part of my career I spent just accompanying people to the hospital just because from our clinic to the hospital, because in the hopes that they would get better care, because there was a person that the
knew.
other doctors knew
Yes.
they were sitting with them. And sometimes that helped and sometimes it didn't. Sometimes you're trying to sort of address the harm done in the afterwash of the experiences of racism and the ways in which it seems very clear that racism led to the delay of this cancer diagnosis.
Right.
And yet we see it, mom sees it, I see it. The pathway, though, is just this space of contention where it's very hard to make others respond and do something differently based on that.
Yes.
Those are the things that were piling up for me. And as you said, there's a bit of the obligation, the responsibility, and maybe the need to stay inside the system and try to be working from there. This is familiar to a lot of people, especially people who probably have like chief diversity officer in their past resumes. And the feeling like you also need to be understanding when it's time to work on this from the outside. What I've learned in my non-binary journey is that we're always both inside and outside of most of the things that are impacting our lives.
Oh, that's so interesting, Dr. Ben. Yes. Say more about that. I think that's true. I can see how I would understand that, but say what you mean.
Yeah, I get a chance to teach and mentor up and coming students, and often, especially if I'm lucky, sometimes Black students and residents in training and stuff. And the question that comes up in a lot of fields, not just medicine, is when do I stay in and when do I go? Like I see how this system is harming.
They're already anticipating that they'll have to make that decision.
When do I stay? When do I go? And I used to spend a lot of time like, well, these are the things you should think about. These are the signs where, blah, blah, and probably made sense about your own wellness and where you see you're making a difference and where the prospect is and whether you have allies and all of whatever I put together. But I feel like I've also come to the sense that you're already someone from the outside because you understand and you see what's happening in ways that probably there's less understanding from others. You're also on the inside because you're in proximity and you know what's happening. It makes us has to deal with all of the things that might not make everybody comfortable.
Yes.
Like by being on the inside, you are also complicit. There's some complicity that you carry.
Right.
And that's not escapable. But it doesn't also mean that you're powerless in that complicity. From the outside, you are able to make more noise and it might not have the same effect. So is that personally satisfying or is that actually transformative? So you have to hold that as well.
Yes.
There are the contradictions, right? This is not black and white. You got to live in this complexity. And if you're both inside and outside, you're dealing with all the pluses and minuses of both sides of that. And you move through the world with that awareness. It's not going to be for me to necessarily tell you exactly where the left foot goes and where the right foot goes. But with that understanding, I think that context, it does help you navigate to some extent.
Right. And I think that advice that you're giving, that mentoring that you're giving is that additional information, right, that we didn't always get, where it's just like, just work, study, keep your head down, get good grades, go to the right schools, and it'll be fine, right? You're saying, yeah, do that stuff. And there will come a time probably when you will have to decide how you want to be in the world. And maybe you're in the middle right now, and that's okay. And maybe you're thinking about in the future, what is that going to look like? How am I going to to take action. How do I decide to do that? Because it's not going to be, to your point earlier, black or white, And I think that's the bit that people left out, and you feel kind of, I don't know, Dr. Ben, is betrayed too strong of a word to be like, hey, you said do all this stuff and I did it. And, but the world's like, we don't care.
The adventure is the adventure, wherever you are spiritually, you plan, and then something else decides what actually is going to happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a truism across cultures in some ways, and experiences and time, maybe.
Yeah.
But I do feel like partway through my career, I really had to honestly and intentionally start unlearning some of the things that those wonderful aunties were teaching.
Yes.
It took me a while to realize Price is Good was really harmful. Was harmful to us, all of us, and it created all of this exceptionalism, strange things that were part of culling and separating us and dividing us from our people. And it created all the inward sellout kinds of tropes and all those. It's just harmful. And there are many other things like that, like the perpetuation of suffering that sometimes came from elders. Like I suffered, so
you have to as well.
Is meaningful unless you are suffering too. And like there are a lot of Black mentors who would just say like, no, it's not. Yours is not legit because you didn't suffer as much as I did. And I'm like, I have to really keep in mind. Like, do I really want the next generation to suffer as much as me? Doesn't that mean zero progress?
Zero progress, right? Yes.
Those are the things you try to learn and grow. And I'm a slow learner. It took me a long time to realize, and it was mostly thanks to Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think, that has a phrase like racism is the father of race, not the child. And that meaning is that racism is the original thing developed, and race is used as the tool. And most people logically would think it was the other way around for some reason. And once you understand that, then it was teaching me how to change my language so that I would change my actions, to your point. So I used to say a lot of things about, and even in my health equity work, about how there were differences in outcomes based on race, or how we had racial disparities and things like that. And I really had to think about that and change and talk about differences in outcomes based on racism.
Yes.
It was not the melanin in the skin that was causing those differences in outcomes. It was the racism. And
because the thinking about it the other way around, which I agree is the norm, right? Is it puts the responsibility on that person because you are this race. These things are happening to you. And it's like, no. That's not it. Yes.
Yeah. And again, to complicate it, race helps you understand racism. Like when you do research and you see differences, it does help you understand racism, but do not make the mistake of thinking it is the cause or the solution.
Right. I think
racism is the cause, and the solution has to be based on racism. That changes your work. Just changes the way you think about things. It took me forever to learn that systems are working exactly the way they're designed. Because I came into healthcare, probably, I'm embarrassed, but like some sort of I'm going to help fix broken systems. And those systems are doing exactly what they're designed to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you make them work even better, that's called complicity. Like that's not good. And then you start to think differently. Then it doesn't mean we need to fix systems. That means we need new systems. Absolutely. And then that changes completely the way I think about the work I should do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, it's okay. I think it's really important, like the kind of nuance and the context that you're drawing to a lot of common situations, I think is really important. There is something though, like I was looking forward to talking to you because of the work that you do in the Black community. You said something earlier in this conversation about people would tell you, maybe I think it was like alluding to not being able to express yourself the way that maybe other people can because of the way that you're being perceived by the world. And I wonder if we could have a conversation and draw that connection between that kind of language and learning and what's happening, in the world. I mean, always has been, but, there's definitely has been recently a lot of femicide against Black women, Black children in the news that we're hearing about. And, from my point of view, I'm always thinking about when I've worked with intimate partner violence survivors, the most dangerous time to leave is the most dangerous time for you is when you decide to leave, right? Because of men not being able to take that rejection. And, if I can't have you, no one can have you, right? And utter destruction. And, I would be interested to hear, your point of view, because you see the messaging that men get. I think sometimes we conflate this kind of violence with mental health things, but there's something else in there too. That's not just about mental health. It's about, how do men learn how to navigate these kinds of things, especially if maybe you're a man who's been told, don't show emotion, but the emotion's there and it's going to come up. It's going to bubble up. Right. And so how do you talk to men that you are mentoring about how to be in the world, and be nonviolent and be, an advocate and an ally for women?
I think that responsibility is big and heavy and under discussed, under considered, and often it is hard sometimes to help people understand where their roles contribute to harm and where they are the recipients of harm. And I think for some, take any circle of people, in this case, consider Black men, and the harmful experiences they're subject to is not any reason for their to feel justified in harming other people. And that understanding is a really important component. And I think that the depth of violence that our society countenances, allows for, and is so quiet about when it comes to violence against women is so dastardly, is so horrible, and yet so pervasive and so persistent. It's recalcitrant. It defies so much of our efforts to change, and we don't make that many efforts to change it.
There's a lot of excuses for it. And yes, absolutely.
Yeah. We have shelters for women escaping domestic violence. And again, in a way, to your point, that's focusing on the survivors of that violence in a needed way. But there's less of a emphasis on like what do we need to do to understand and correct the behavior that was leading to that violence?
Yes.
How do we understand the earliest phases and steps that are building up to that violence? How do we oh man, this is where my elders still have me about the deep respect that we hold for each other, should hold for each other. How much our expressions of violence are just likely to land on the places most proximate to us, the places closest to us.
Yes, absolutely.
And how much that's woven into just a deep, straight up misogyny and gender bias that is persistent across our society and lives on in Black communities as well.
Yeah. You were talking about what you learned from your sisters about the kind of, gender bias that they went through. And I was talking to someone about this the other day. I'm one of two girls. And I was thinking about, I wonder, what settles, well, doctor, you know more about this than me, like the cortisol levels that women have from the time they're young, have how to learn to keep themselves safe. Don't do this, don't do that. And it's like, what if the work was just teaching men to be safe to women, right? Instead of us trying to keep ourselves safe. Like it's so much work. It's like you were talking about being Black and like navigating all these spaces and that kind of emotional labor, and I think, for a lot of women, it's like that's emotional labor that we just have been taking on since, the time we can remember.
On top of all of the shame of that is this weird allocation of our effort in such a strange way. I've come to believe this thing that is a slightly an aside, but it's basically goes against the whole laws of physics and Newton and gravity. But so much of our fatigue in this life is because of our being party to, proximate to, or in the space of oppression, of holding people down. And the work of lifting people up is just so much lighter than the work of holding people down.
Right. Yep. If only more people realize that, Dr. Ben.
Yeah. So it goes against gravity, but it is um, it would be so much different to do the work of making us more caring and lifting up our relationship to each other rather than
Yes.
addressing the work of oppression and harm. And I don't think those are mutually exclusive. We have to do both, but can we put some time into
Yeah.
uh, the lifting up, the rising up, and the shared accountability that should come with that, and
Right.
create ways to shield people from accountability
Mm.
for those actions, partly by just paying attention to the ways in which those actions need us for us to create systems of shelter, and not
Yes.
by creating systems of true accountability. And I don't just mean punishment, because like we're real good at
Uh-huh.
punishing, especially
Yes.
Black people as a country.
Yeah.
But accountability is not
Mm-hmm.
the same to me. Understanding, rising into becoming respectful of fellow human beings, having a
Yes.
deep respect, especially for women, and the need for that in our Black communities is just so, again, so apparent to me. I worked in a clinic named after a Black woman, the Odessa
Mm.
Brown Children's, not John Brown Children, Odessa Brown, and that's
Mm.
not unusual. Right next to us was a clinic that is the last clinic that it was started by the Black Panthers. It's the
Wow.
last existing Black Panther clinic in the country. It's called Carolyn Downs Clinic. Um, Black women in our communities doing everything, doing
Mm.
so much to hold things together, carrying that water, lifting up,
Yes.
even in the face of being so deeply oppressed. I deeply wish in our Black communities that we set a different example, a different measure, a different bar, both honoring the
Mm.
disproportionate level of work that women have always been making in our communities, and also um, showing other cultures and communities that a different and better way.
Yeah. Right. And that accountability, you used the word accountability, and it made me think of what we were talking about earlier with, in the hospitals, like, hey, we did this program, we did this study, and here it is. And then that thing changes, right? Because there's the noticing, there's the action, right? And there's the
Yeah.
accountability. And like across all of these things that we're talking about, you need all of them to take place for change to be made. And you need people like you who are modeling that lifting up, yes, I've seen it, I
Oh,
see it, and this is what I
I,
can do.
I don't know if I'm doing that, but
You are
totally.
Dr. Ben. Yes.
The one thing I'm allowed to say about that is that in order for you to become aware of something and not do something about it, it requires what I would call a cover up. So it's
Mm,
not just the lack of accountability, but it's the action of covering it up,
yes.
that is also where the crime exists when it comes
Right.
to harm. And I think, back to your point, we cover up domestic violence in in constantly and in so many ways.
Absolutely.
It is
Hmm.
it is an added crime on top of crime.
It is. It is because even though it's wrong, right? The survivors or the victims, that the shame often is on them. It feels like it's on them. It's, they're the ones who are trying to keep the secret, right? To cover the pain that someone else is causing them, because of all of these things that we've discussed. But Dr. Ben, I do want to, talk to you about what you are
Okay.
doing, because you are doing a lot of modeling and a lot of mentoring. Talk to me about your work with ASHE, with the Allies and Healthier Systems for Health and Abundance in Youth.
Oh, thank you for asking that.
Yes.
So I started Ashe, and that's just an honorific phrase in our Black communities,
Hmm.
right? You say
Hmm.
Ashe, it's a
Hmm.
it's a voicing of an affirmation. It's maybe even a willing of an manifestation of
Yes.
something that you want to see happen. And so that name was really intentional. The acronym is clunky, but the name is very intentional.
It's
Um,
okay. You get people saying Ashe all the time.
exactly. Some of them don't even know what they're saying when they're saying it, and I'm still happy they're saying it.
Right.
But it was really coming out of understanding more about the depths of the factors that lead in our society to harming young Black people, especially, and others through our carceral systems and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. The ways in which we take someone who is deemed other, whether that's because they're trans or because they're Black or because their culture and language is different than some other person's judgment, And we either try to lock them up or lock them out, especially
Mm,
as young people. Leads to homelessness if they're locked out, leads to
yes.
incarceration, locked up. And the ways in which that harm is specifically foisted on people who are already facing harm, the way we add harm to harm
Mm,
is so unconscionable, especially when it's under the responsibility of governments and
yes.
um, constructed systems made of human
Mm,
beings should have a different responsibility. And so I worked in that clinic, Odessa Brown Clinic. One of the nearest entities to it was the detention center, juvenile detention center,
wow.
closer than any college, and just about closer than the nearest high school. And so,
Mm,
for all whatever training I had, and for all the love I saw in community, and the ways of knowing that amazing parents had, the systems were drawing their kids into incarceration, and my stethoscope had a pretty limited reach to it, and along with my training, and I understood that you got to get outside of your lane if you really want to
yes.
see different things happen. So,
Mm,
getting into the work of trying to address youth incarceration, especially, and other forms of system
mm-hmm.
foisted harm on our people.
Yes.
That's meant sometimes our tagline is sort of unbuilding the fortifications of harm, like
Mm,
incarceration, and building up the fortifiers of health and well-being in our people. Because if you're only anti something, even for me, I've had to face if I'm only anti-racist and I'm not pro something,
yes.
I'm not about really anything. I'm just moving without a direction. And
Right.
so you have to unbuild and you have to build. Yeah, there has to be some
Yes.
place you're going to. And so we try to build up communities that where the very idea of locking somebody up or locking somebody out, especially a young person, is deemed unimaginable, inconceivable, and unacceptable. And how do we
Absolutely.
build towards that?
Yeah. That's
We do
amazing.
weird things. We take just one example:
Mm-hmm.
17-year-old uh, black young man who society is starting to deem as pre-criminal or something.
Mm,
Um, pair them up with a professional children's book author and then with some professional illustrators and work with them, pay them, and then after 7 weeks, they have written a children's book.
that's
They even
amazing.
work with 4 or 5-year-olds, kind of giving them some hints and stuff. And by the end of it, they are published authors. They have an ISBN.
Wow.
They are authors, and no one can take that away from them. And
Wow.
uh, I can't say I'm a published author of a children's book. Like they are
Yep.
doing something that is,
That's
I
amazing.
think, really amazing. And you start to shift the way we get to see ourselves and see each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be part of the solution to how we get
Yes.
out of this stuck rut that we are in with our status quos today.
Right. And especially when you have people who, you're saying have been deemed like pre-criminal. So you've had years probably of people conditioning and people telling you this is who you are. And then what you're
Yeah.
doing this in this really beautiful way is you're giving them another way to look at themselves. Hey, look at this a skill, this ability you have. But you're also then having them kind of be a mentor and maybe also, like you with the nurses, like learning a lot from these 4 or 5-year-olds, right? Who are going to tell you like it
Yes.
is, and so you get
Yep.
to have that experience as well. Someone's looking up to you, but you're also kind of like, hey, this kid has a good point, or this, this is really smart. And then the finished product is something that is an amazing accomplishment, and so all the
Mhm.
pieces of that, right? It's not
Yeah.
just, sitting with someone and being like, you can do it, like you can pass this class and you can go to college, but it's like you can define who you are and who you want to be. And you don't have to listen to the past things
Yeah.
that you've been told about who you are.
Yeah. And you have a story to tell, and your story
Yes.
is valid.
Right.
There was a Nigerian writer, I forget her name right now, Ngozi. There was a story about like when she was a kid, when she would write stories about mountains and snow on them and
Mm.
stuff like that. And then she realized one day, like there were no mountains around her. And the
No snow.
reason, yeah, snow was it wasn't even a concept. And the part of the reason was the only stories she was offered were stories from other people's experiences
Oh,
in which there was snow and mountains.
wow.
And when you have a single story that's the only one that you have access to, and
Mm,
it does not include you, how can you see a future that
absolutely.
is something that you have a say in? And so anyway, they have amazing stories. Like they've done incredible books. There's a trans person. They wrote a story about just how they see themselves for real when they look in the mirror, and how that image is very different than the image that they're presently in, and the story around that. And 4 and 5-year-olds love that story. Love that story.
I bet, right?
Yeah.
Because we've all had that feeling, but then, not necessarily talking about it, or, especially as you get older and like in different forms, like how that comes through in your life. Like, I'm sure that is a really important story to be able to tell, to people. Yes.
Yeah. There's one that you would appreciate where.
Okay, tell me. Did they talk about trauma? Is that why you said I'd appreciate it?
There was one, and he wrote the story about a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, basically. That kind of transformation. And the way the story was centered was that the caterpillar had a lot of worry and anxiousness and anxiety about the impending change.
Wow.
But that wasn't the only part of the story. All of the friends of the caterpillar were super anxious about what was happening to the caterpillar. And I just feel like from a therapist, from a mental health perspective, this idea about anxiety about change, about impending change.
It sounds like a beautiful way of like sharing that. Yes. Amazing.
And then the whole crux of the story is how people are helping each other manage that anxiety about that change. The change is just going to happen. So it's not even part of the story so much as it is like, how do we hold each other?
Yes.
How do we show up for each other? How do we even understand our own, like, I'm worried for you. Like,
Yeah.
And that makes me anxious. And that has an effect on my body. And it's
right.
Like a 17-year-old wrote that. And it's, Pulitzer right away.
It's
just saying.
Beautiful. Okay. So Dr. Ben, these are amazing. And I'm so appreciative for you for sharing, like, not only your journey, the work you're doing now, the kind of hopes and, the aspirations that you have for our community and all of the things that, you're already helping people accomplish.
Yeah, we're just finishing up a documentary that youth have made in a high school that was ravaged by gun violence. We're also doing more like traditional center stuff, like studying the experiences across the country of closing youth detention centers and how that's worked and done well. And we've been trying to do other kinds of prevention work, pouring a sense of belonging into middle schoolers in order to see if that decreases the rates of homelessness and incarceration when they're in high school.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being here today and for talking to me and sharing all of the amazing work that you're doing with us. Really
Thank you for all the work you do. I was listening to many of your other podcasts and it's just what you bring out in people. Was it T11's interview was just was still ringing in my ears. Just
what's so funny? I feel like as a therapist, and I've said this to people before, it's like I have amazing conversations all the time. And you get to see people, but no one else ever gets to hear it. And I don't talk to anyone else about them. So for me to get to be able to talk to and hear all these people, everyone's different perspectives, and it can be out there in the world, like it feels like such a gift, such a special thing to be able to do. So
thank you for opening that window and just sharing that a little bit. And there's so many different ways to walk in this world, and it makes the world better. Like that's the message you're giving. These different experiences make us all better, and we should be seeking that out rather than trying to abolish it. It's just amazing.
Thank you for saying that. For more information on me, you can find me at drpatricelegoy.com and on social media at Dr. Patrice Le Goy. Thank you so much, Dr. Ben. Really appreciate it. Thank you for listening.